I want to start with this concept of emasculating men. And even in the book, it gets as graphic as saying castrating men,
Yep.
right, the extremity of that.
Yep.
And I had a couple girlfriends visiting, and it was while I was reading this book, and the one went to pick it up, and she historically is not the fondest of men. And I was like, that's not a book for you. And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, if you're going to read it, you have to make this commitment to stop emasculating men." And she's like, "I don't do that." And I said, "Listen, I'm only a few chapters in, and I realized that I do it. If I'm doing it, you absolutely are doing it. So yes, you can read it, but like don't go past chapter 3 unless you are going to make this commitment." And she's like, "Oh, well, we'll see." And she's reading it. And I can just see like these kind of like aha moments happening as she's reading. And she's like, "Wait, I do this." So, for our listeners, can you kind of describe what that looks like, what that feels like, how we might be doing it without realizing it?
Yes, I can. And if we were going to group what I had to learn in those 15 years, was one set would be what causes us to have the impulse, or even a drive, even a campaign to
Mm,
diminish men, to
mm,
weaken them, to take their power, to take the wind out of their sails, to stop them in their tracks. So what causes that, right? And if we were going to put it, just categorize it, you could say fear and frustration. So
mm,
frustration that we can't get what we need from them, fear of how big and strong they are and how easily we're overpowered and how much we're affected by them, none of which they really understand very well. So some combination of fear and frustration will cause us to diminish men. And even when we don't know, it diminishes them. Like we try to change men's behavior by criticizing them. And we usually in some form of, why do you do that? Or, why didn't you do that? Right. So it's this critical edge, calling them to account. And we do that because we don't know how to change men. So we try to change them the way you would change a woman. If you said something like that to a woman, she'd be all over it. She couldn't help it because of the way that we're put together. So what has us do it? And then all the ways that we do it, all the
mhm,
ways that we diminish men. And one of the most important discoveries actually came because of someone I was leading a private workshop for. The whole group was giving up the right to emasculate men forever. And she was on stage with me and she goes, "Well, should we give up the right to emasculate women?" And should we give up the right to emasculate ourselves? And I had never thought of it. And how come I'm bringing it up now is because all the ways we diminish men, we also diminish women and we diminish ourselves. Like
mm,
huge way that we take power away, or just it's like don't ever give them any power, is we withhold appreciation, we withhold admiration because they're not perfect. You have a
mhm.
lot of improvement to do before I'm going to admire you, right? So appreciation, admiration, even accountability. We don't realize we will ask them to help us, but we don't want them to be in charge because we don't trust them to do it right. And we don't know how much it matters to them to be counted on, and what it means to them, and how many things they strive to be accountable for, right? And then the last thing, and this showed up really early on. I'd been studying men for 6 months when a woman I knew, her name is Ellen Hurst, probably the only person that could have cut through, right? Like I'm thinking about how you were talking to your friend. I'm like, dang, you're a good friend. You were really great about that. But she called me on the phone and said, we need to talk. Said men are attracted to you like bees to honey, but when you're done with them, it's as if they've been with a vampire.
Wow.
She said that. And I like, let alone me. And I'd been I've been learning a lot in those 6 months, and I didn't realize I had been using it to be an even better manipulator of men and
Whoa.
therefore more able to diminish them. And
Mhm.
she witnessed it because I was engaged to a friend of hers and had called it off. Huge drama, right? And
Mhm.
but when she asked me, she pointed out all the ways she'd seen me castrate men, and she used that word. And as she was pointing it out, I was like, oh, yeah, that was a good one. Oh, I remember that one. Oh, yeah, very effective. And then, because I didn't know, she was going to say, okay, I want you to cut it out. And my reaction was like, Kimberly's in the Queen's Code. Well, then how will I protect myself? So
Mhm.
there are women who justify, which is the third category. So, what causes us to do it? How do we do it? And then, how do we justify doing it? And that was one of the things that I discovered immediately after giving up emasculating men myself, because I couldn't tolerate being around women who were doing it. Like once I saw the effect, I couldn't stand it anymore. And so I started engaging with them individually about not doing it. And that's when I started to hear the justifications. Like there was mine. Well, how will I protect myself? They're bigger and stronger and they'll hurt me. My best friend who started our company with me in 1995, hers was they have too much power and they abuse it. And that was her justification for taking power. My mother's
Mhm.
justification was they're stupid. They're so stupid. Like,
Ugh.
really? And so there are a lot of ways that we justify that these people deserve to be diminished. And for all the men who are listening, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for that, because what I had to learn myself and then keep studying and teaching and still do is that most of how we justify our right, we really consider that we have the right to diminish men, most of how we justify it is based upon our perception of what they're doing, and our interpretation of their motivations and intentions in doing it. So, motivations being
Mhm.
where they come from, intentions, what they're trying to get to. And we interpret them through a filter, as you know, of what it would mean if a woman did that.
Mhm.
And not only any woman, but what would it mean if the perfect woman did that?
Mhm.
An idealized one, right? And so all this curiosity that showed up, right? I didn't mean to study men for more than 30 years. I thought it would take 2 or 3 months to learn everything I needed to know. I just wanted to know, how was I bringing out the worst in them, and hoping I'd learn a little about how to bring out the best. But the more I learned about them, the more I've been fascinated for more than 3 decades. I still think, who are these people? They have such a different way of seeing the world and their roles, their duties, their obligations, what's great, their definition of great, what that means. I mean, it's so different than as women how we judge and what we hold ourselves to account for. And so that's how I've seen all the misinterpretations. And ages ago, I wrote an article called Never Be Ignored by a Man Again. And and as you read the article and learn about single focus, women were finding out they've actually never been ignored ever. Unless that's all a man was doing, was actively ignore her, ignore her, ignore her, ignore her, ignore her, right?
Mhm.
But because we don't understand testosterone and the effects on the brain and the committed state of mind that most men have, and that the single focus, as soon as they commit, it screens out everything irrelevant.
Mhm.
They were never ignoring us. Their
Mhm.
brain did it for them so
Yep.
they could produce the result they were committed to. And it's been a lot like that. doing sort of like your friend, right? Which I just love that story. Thank you so much for telling it to me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. One, that you would give her a heads up, and that you didn't pull your punches, right? A lot of times we're going to try to soften something so that we don't upset anybody, but that you gave her the straight truth. Do you know, if I do it, you do it, and don't go past chapter 3 if you're not willing to give it up. And thank you. And I just, oh my gosh, it's so perfect. But so oftentimes what I do now, before in the beginning, it was all just sunshine and unicorns, all the good news.
Mhm.
But then there were so many women who were just pissed at men and righteous about it. And they didn't want to have anything to do with Alison Armstrong.
Mhm.
And so but I was ready for them. I'd been like in training. I could wrestle the alligator, right? I didn't just have to have the people who are open, right? They didn't have to be open anymore. So I did things like on our website, you can listen to something called Why You Can't Trust Men to Tell the Truth. It's actually a video. And when I came out with this event, Why You Can't Trust Men to Tell the Truth, my graduates were like, Alison, what happened to you, right? But it's like Never Be Ignored Again. It has a flip in it. It has a twist
Mhm.
in it, and something we don't sell, which we probably should, called Using Anger to Get What You Need. And so it attracted
Ooh.
all these women who either wish they could use anger to get what they need or were using anger to get what they need. And what's the bottom line? It doesn't work.
No.
And it has very long term effects that we don't want. So, oh man, it's been such a journey.